Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to the latest narration of the web series, The Human from a Dungeon. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description, and as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 42. Nick Smith, Adventurer Level 7, Human American. You want me to vomit in public, Yisenrith hissed. Sire, we can be mindful of your dignity whilst you're rejecting the demon, Oakmar said, unable to hide his grin. We can set up curtains to mask what is being done. Everyone will still know that it happened. Well, at least it's not on the other end, Your Majesty, I added, trying to be helpful. The High Dragon's furious eyes focused on me, and I felt my blood freeze again. I am an idiot, and silently vowed to keep my mouth shut as often as possible. High Dragons do not defecate, boy, he hissed. Really? I asked incredulously, unable to keep my vow. You think I lie? We are smart enough to take care with what we eat, and our bodies use every last bit of what we consume, Yisenrith explained. This is true, Nick, Oakmar said. The purpose of a High Dragon's intestinal tract appears to be for flatulence, not defecation. Yisenrith slowly turned his attention from me to the regent. If there is a single person in our ever-growing audience that can understand what you just said, I will bite you in half. Apologies, Your Highness. I meant only to educate, not offend, Oakmar said as he lowered his head, masking that his grin had widened. Enough, Yisenrith growled. Truth be told, I would enjoy being free of this burden. I'll make the arrangements, Your Majesty. Oakmar bowed deeply, then began explaining the plan to some of the gathered people. As he began to walk away, Yuk scooched over to me and gave me a nudge. Nick, he said, could you ask the king if he would mind answering some questions? What? I asked, thinking I may have hallucinated what I just heard. I want to ask the king some questions. This is an amazingly rare opportunity, he explained, not only to interview a High Dragon, but to interview one with the first-hand account of the Cataclysm Wars. Wait, don't you want to know how I can talk to him? With 10, obviously, Nash interrupted. Yoke is right, Nick. As long as you're polite with the questions, you've got nothing to be afraid of. Easy for him to say. Yisenrith was watching Oakmar, impatiently tapping one of his claws on the ground. The claw in question is easily as big as I am, and I could feel the ground shake slightly with each tap. I had also noticed that when he had grinned earlier, his teeth were the size of my head. There was absolutely no doubt in my mind that the High Dragon could erase everyone present if he so wished. Please, Nick, Yulk pouted. It was a ridiculous sight and immediately pulled me out of the anxiety spiral I had been swirling down. He pushed his lower lip forward, and it caught on his teeth. The lip looked kind of like one of those seashell soap holders. I smiled and shook my head. Fine, but if we die, I want it on record that it's your fault, I told him, then looked up at the dragon. Excuse me, Your Highness. What is it? Yisenrith met my gaze. Would you mind if we asked you some questions? This Orc Yuk would like to know more about the Cataclysm Wars. The dragon's brow furrowed, then he sighed through his nose. So be it. Ask your questions. He said yes, I told Yuk. Excellent. Ask him what started the war and if he knows how the demons entered our world. I nodded and repeated the question to Yisenrith, settling into a role of interpreter. The demonic invasion was the cause of the war, Yisenrith chuckled. Though many nations were already at war before their invasion. The demons entered our world through vast portals, though how these portals were created eludes me. I do know that these portals worked both ways, though, as the demons brought many more back through with them. Who made the wastes? Multiple parties, demons, angels, and mer sorcerers fought viciously to destroy each other's forces, and the mass corruption of nature was the result. Those that were responsible cared little for the environment, or even the safety of their own soldiers. What about the monsters? Who created them? The demons created many monsters to destroy the mer, bastardizing nature's own creations in the process. The Mer quickly followed suit, justifying their actions as a means to survive the onslaught. Many of the monsters predate the war, though, and nobody knew where they originate. Why did the daemons invade? They did not stop to explain themselves, Yssenrith chuckled. If a scholar of this age does not know their reasons, then they must truly be lost to time. What about the demon in your belly? I asked before I told Yuke what the king had said. Wouldn't he know? He is little more than bone. His mind was destroyed by the acids within me long ago. Yssenrith shook his head. He wouldn't even know his own name by now. I informed Yuke of the king's response of both of our questions. He nodded and continued his questions. How long have you ruled over Balasar? Yssenrith paused. One moment. The king hissed unintelligibly as his eyes flashed blue for an instant. Whatever just happened caused his brows to rise and his slight smile to fade. By Bogglerath, it has been 18,782 years. Doesn't feel nearly that long. Apparently time flies more than I do, he said with a sigh. Bogglerath? I asked. The first high dragon. She was given intelligence as a reward for defeating a god in combat, and became the mother of all high dragons. She has become somewhat deified, obviously. As I explained this to York, elves and gnomes started bringing supplies to enact Regent Oakmar's plan. York reminded me of what Joni had said about the Prignera account of the Cataclysm Walls and asked me to verify it with the King Yssenrath. I am unfamiliar with the Prignera, but there was an underground dwarven kingdom named Basuria on the southern continent. The events themselves are accurate, though I know not of any demonic conspiracies prior to the war. Perhaps they are referring to the actions of the cult, or it could be a convenient cover-up for some of the abysmal actions committed by the various royal families of the time. What kind of actions? Before the demons invaded, the lands were at war. Balasar was one of the only nations that managed to stay out of it. But my father was wise and had spies in various nations that may have tried something. We received word of terrible state-sanctioned experiments, all in the name of one-upping their neighbors on the field of battle. This is one of the main reasons we reacted to the cult in the way that we did, and why we didn't chase them over our borders. We suspected that they may have had royal backing, and crossing over our borders may have dragged us into wars that we wanted no part of. York appeared deep in thought, as I explained what the High Dragon had said. As I finished, Regent Oakmar approached us. We are nearly ready, Your Majesty, he said, as a group of gnomes carried a large cube-shaped container past him. The gnomes lowered a steel container to the ground with a thud, and the two groups of elves approached. One group had bags of what appeared to be powdered concrete mix, and began pouring them into the container. The other group had begun to set up tall curtains around Yssenrath. The High Dragon eyed them warily, but did not interfere. Another group of elves carrying water and oars replaced the group with the concrete powder at the container. They added water to the powder and began to stir it. We watched as the groups took turns at the container, adding more powder and water until it was nearly filled. Once they were finished, Oakmar gestured to the group around the curtains, and they drew the curtains around the High Dragon. Your Majesty, please do not regurgitate directly into the box. Your, for lack of a better phrase, stomach juices will likely be detrimental to the concrete, Oakmar explained. Regurgitate, what a disgusting word, Yssenrath hissed. Fine. His head lowered beneath the curtain, and after a moment of a sound that can only be described as disturbingly slimy, made its way to our ears. I'd expected to hear the sound of retching, but the sound I heard instead nearly made me gag, like forcing a bowling ball covered in not quite done jelly through a hose or something. I looked at my companions, and I could tell the sound had the same impact on them. Another moment later, Yssenrith's head appeared above the curtain. It is done, he said. Thank you, Your Majesty, Oakmar gestured to a group of gnomes who were carrying a steel square with small holes in it. The elves dragged the curtain back, and the gnomes put the steel square on top of the container, hammering it down to form a lid. The container began to make sloshing sounds, and some concrete splashed out of the holes in the top. "Oh, already," Oakmar said, sounding flabbergasted. "Cue the concrete, quickly." More elves walked up to the container and began casting various spells. The sloshing ceased with a stark crack, and the elves nodded to Oakmar. One of the gnomes walked up, shaking his head. "I think he might have moved around and weakened the concrete, sir," the gnome reported. "The crack wasn't a good sound." "That's all right. We'll just leave the cube in the container," the regent rubbed his chin. "Maybe we will have the smith weld some bars on it just to be sure." "Yes, your Lord Regent," the gnome said, looking at King Yssenrith. "Gonna take some getting used to." "Not at all, my good Mer," Oakmar said with a grin. "Take the container to Horaf's smithy. He's got plenty of steel scrap to use as bracing. Let him know that we want the cube to never open again." The gnome nodded and started giving orders to his crew. They, along with some help from the elves, managed to get the steel cube into a cart and started transporting it away. Oakmar watched them for a moment, and then turned back to the High Dragon. "Your Highness," he bowed, "this is the perfect occasion for a feast. Will you permit us to celebrate your return to the throne?" "Certainly," Yssenrith said. "However, I require some calisthenics. It has been far too long since I have stretched my wings. Feel free to celebrate without me. I will rejoin you soon." The High Dragon stood, causing several shocked gasps in the surrounding crowd. I thought he was huge while he was laying down, but his true height was mind-boggling. He stretched his neck and limbs, and his bones cracked like trees in a storm. Finally, he spread his mighty wings. The white skin on his wings featured blue veins that seemed to form a sort of symbol. Before I could get a good look at it, though, the wings flapped and sent a gust of air at us that nearly sent me sprawling. I managed to see a gnome fly back a foot or two, and when I returned back to the High Dragon, he was gone. I looked to the sky to see if I could spot him, but he had disappeared with a frightening speed. The implications of how quickly he had moved set in, and I couldn't help but shudder a little. Big things shouldn't be able to move that fast. It's unnatural. "Well, what a fantastic day. Hopefully I can retire soon," Regent Oakmar smiled. "I doubt it, Lord Regent," a nearby elf said. "You're the only one that understands the king." "Oh, shit." End of chapter. I'd quickly like to thank our T5 Patreon and channel members, Casper Arnholtz, Jon Creighton, 050, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.